Hi. So, apparently, we're living in the year of over exaggerations because did we see the same movie? Joker Folie à Deux has two main issues. One is that it's not as good as the first movie, which, oh no. The second is that ending, which I will get to, but not quite yet. There is a lot that I have to say. Some good, some bad, some middling, but overall, I really love this. Okay, so first off, thank you to those of you who haven't clicked away by this point. Um, Now, movie opinions are subjective, right? If a movie doesn't work for you, that's okay. If a movie really works for you, that's okay too. And for those people who this movie didn't work for, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. I can see why it wouldn't work for some people. There are people that completely despise musicals. There are people that, really didn't vibe with the first one, so this one wouldn't change their mind. But what I realized while watching the movie was anyone who has told me that they didn't like it or or I've seen say that it's the worst movie of the year or the worst movie they've ever seen hasn't been able to tell me why it's so bad. When I was in the theater, at about the second musical segment, I sat up and said, "This is awesome. What's everyone seeing that I'm not?" I kept waiting for the movie to be bad, and it just didn't. And like I said, no one who has told me this was bad could tell me why. But I can definitely tell you why I think it's so good. Everything about this movie, quality wise, is in line with the first film. The aesthetics are in line with it. The performances are, the presentation, the camera work, the writing, everything is in line with the first film. Except the dream sequences in this one are the musical numbers. It was a good way to spice that up to make it refreshing. So it's not just the same movie again, right? And the story. The story is just as bleak and hard hitting as the story in the first film, too. This film touches on the aftermath of Arthur's actions in the first Joker film. And there's a scene with Gary Puddles that really hits home on how traumatized and afraid he was after he saw Arthur murder that person in his apartment near the end of the first film. And it's really heartbreaking because he feels betrayed by Arthur. Arthur was the only person that was ever nice to him at their, street clown job. And he feels so utterly lost and betrayed by that. Arthur doing that in front of him changed his whole perspective when it came to this whole Joker persona that he was doing to do these killings. It almost brought a tear to my eye, honestly. What also could have been done for this movie, right? They could have ran away with Arthur's celebrity status, right? And just focused on that. But they don't. They of course mention it. It is a facet of the character that he has the celebrity status because of what he did in the first film. What I really respected was that people are still mean to Arthur in this world. That was what drove him to do what he did do in Joker 1, was that everyone was just so utterly mean to him. Society was so cold to him, and he felt like he needed to just lash out against it. And it's still the same. Nothing for him has changed except for the fact that he has followers that agree with his actions, and they may not even necessarily care about him. Maybe they just care about the things that he has done underneath a certain guise. But yeah, people are still very mean to him. And it's almost as if what he did was all for nothing. It's such a bleak and unforgiving world. And I loved it. I felt like it was, a natural progression for the character up until a point. So before I get into any more positives about this movie, I'm going to get into one my big negative. Like I mentioned, the ending. So I felt as if the movie was a natural progression for the character. And I felt the buildup. I was on the ride. And then they completely wasted it, which disappointed me so much. So this ending absolutely implies that they had no idea how to end this movie because they didn't want to make it. I think that that's ultimately what the biggest problem here is. They didn't want to make it. It's an obligation movie. You can tell just by the ending, which is so heartbreaking because everything leading up to it is so good. Again, not as great as the first film or anything, but it is really good. So Arthur is about to get his verdict at the end of the film, and his followers commit an attack on the courtroom. They just blow up the courtroom and try to help him escape. He gets caught and put back into the asylum pretty much immediately. He's approached by this inmate that wants to tell him a joke. The punchline to the joke, just like Arthur had in the first film, was he murders Arthur as the punchline of his joke. So I hated this. I hated every minute of this because I knew exactly why it existed. It existed because they didn't know what to do with him because they didn't want to make this movie. Um, this inmate stabs him repeatedly, and Arthur has this one last fantasy sequence where he's pretty much singing himself off stage, right? And as he's laying there dying, you see his assailant in the background carving at his face, implying that that inmate was the real Joker and Arthur was his inspiration. Arthur was not the real Joker. If I weren't on camera for YouTube right now, I'd be giving the camera a middle finger right now because that was a big FU to the fans. That ending in general. This whole movie wasn't like people have been saying, but that ending absolutely was. It did not stick the landing at all because it came out of nowhere. That was not the natural progression for Arthur to be killed by somebody just because. There was no indication that that was going to happen. There was an indication in the final trial scene, one of the final trial scenes, that he was ready to let go of the Joker persona, and I think that that would have been a fine ending where he was like, "Okay, I'm done with this. I'll take my accountability and I'll let it all go and I'll face my consequences." But no, they did this ending that essentially said, "We didn't want to make this movie. We didn't know what to do with Arthur as the Joker, so here you go, we're done." He just dies. Acting as if it's some Logan type send off, and it wasn't. It didn't make me turn on the movie because for me, everything before it was it just worked for me, but this ending did not. And maybe I'll change my opinion on the movie later because of that, but yeah, man, that was a choice and not a good one. But what was a good choice was Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn. In fact, it was a great choice. So a lot of the vitriol around this movie is drowning out the fact that Lady Gaga has really done a home run performance here. No one is talking about her, and it's insane because she's undoubtedly the best character and performance in the movie, bar none. She's my personal favorite. Now, she's really only Harley Quinn in name, which is okay because Harley Quinn is sort of becoming her own character. The character, this interpretation of the character, is being done so well that I'm kind of sad we may not see this version of the character again. This Harley Quinn is not flamboyant and shrill and giggly and loud and bouncy, but that's okay because she's still deeply disturbed and mentally ill, and you see it in her eyes, on her facial expressions, in her inflections, and certainly in some of the actions that she takes. The performance is it's so subtle and so pinpoint pitch perfect. I was floored and fully impressed. And honestly, she may be a big reason why I did love this movie so much. And man, I really, really wish that this character did not have the ending that she did because I want to see more of her. But we'll always have this movie. Yeah, man, I really liked this movie a lot. And its biggest sin is that it's not perfect. That's it. The ending, like I said, is a choice, and it does merit to be criticized. You should make fun of this ending because it was a stupid choice and a heartbreaking one. Because if you didn't want to make this movie, you could have passed it on to someone else. Someone who would have ended it with respect. And it's so baffling because the whole movie is treated like it has respect, and then it's just stomped on, all for nothing. It's really disappointing at the end of the day, but the content of the movie, the rest of the movie, man, it's an 8, 9 out of 10. It's really good. It really is. It's just so deeply flawed, and that's its biggest problem. And it really sucks because if there was going to be any more like this, the way that they ended this really kind of does away with all that now. So, no more refreshing takes on Batman villains, I guess. Well, no, I guess, we'll still always have Matt Reeves as the Penguin, which has been fantastic, by the way. I'm in love with that show. But love him or hate him, those are my thoughts on Joker 2. Yeah, I didn't hate it. Sorry, I didn't. And at the risk of being yelled at, what did you all think of the movie? If you saw it already, are you going to at all? What do you think of this whole DC Elseworlds label that they're doing with DC now? Are you gonna be interested in any more of these? Let's talk everything DC and Batman and the Joker down in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.